My nature is gentle and still, and I am most skilled at endurance. I was 8 years old when I witnessed my father, in league with my aunt, poison my mother. I endured for 5 years. I watched, with my own eyes, as my father and my aunt who had taken my mother's place lived as a loving couple, respectful and devoted, right before me. It was not until I turned 13 that I seized my chance. As my aunt went into labor, I lured her to the outskirts of the city, with one blow of a club. I shattered her kneecap and pushed her into a freezing pond. Then, I hid in the shadows. When my father plunged into the water in a frantic attempt to save her, I struck him in the head with my club, sending all 3 of them, father, aunt, and her unborn child, to pay their respects to my mother. They could not swim, and their bodies were not found until they had rotted beyond recognition. Just then, my eldest cousin was about to enter the palace, and our marquis household deemed an elaborate funeral too unlucky. They were hastily buried under the pretext of an accidental drowning. I even had their bones sealed with Taoist talismans to prevent their restless spirits from finding peace. That was my extra gift to them. I am meticulous. I leave no loose ends. But in the 3rd year of my marriage into the general's household, my husband Li Sun brought back a souvenir from the border, an orphaned girl who had saved his life, and I knew it was time for me to act again. On the 3rd day of her stay, Song Tinglin's courtyard went up in flames. Clutching her burned arm, she huddled in my husband's arms, her eyes red. It's not anyone's fault. I should not have entered the general's manor and offended the lady. Li Sun's face darkened. He turned to me, his voice cold. Shuyu, do you admit your fault? I lifted my eyes to meet his. Is the general accusing me of setting fire to Miss Song's courtyard? His lips parted, but when Song Tinglan let out a pained hiss over her burnt arm, his mouth tightened into a hard line. I understood. Someone summoned the authorities. Song Tinglin's sobs stopped abruptly. Her old nursemaid fell to her knees, barely containing her panic. Miss is already blessed to be a guest in the general's manor. How could we trouble the authorities over a fire and bring more problems to the general? It would only put Miss, who has already caused trouble, in an even more difficult position. It's just a small wound. Nothing serious. Song Tinglan clutched her sleeves, her body trembling. She looked both innocent and terrified. Li Sun frowned deeply. Even if you didn't start the fire, failing to manage the household and allowing my benefactor to be harmed is still your fault. Failure to manage the household. I lowered my voice and called out. Summon the stewards of every courtyard. Tonight's patrol. And the head matron of the Wutong courtyard for questioning. Song Tinglin's lashes fluttered. I caught it. I smiled, mockingly, though Miss Song calls it a small wound. It has damaged the reputation of my inner household. I am merely disciplining negligent servants. Miss Song wouldn't object to that, would she? Her nursemaid opened her mouth to retort, but I tapped my teacup and said, evenly. Arson and murder are serious crimes. We must either report it to the authorities or conduct an internal investigation. One or the other. The woman was left speechless. Half a cup of tea later, all the courtyard stewards, the night patrol, and the head matron of the Wutong courtyard stood before me. Song Tinglan bit her lip, her voice fragile and tearful. It's my fault for troubling everyone so late at night. Li Sun unfastened his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. You've been wronged. I will see justice done for you. Song Tinglan looked at me with coy triumph, her eyes glinting. I ignored it. I set down my teacup. The Wutong courtyard's head matron failed in her duty. The night patrol was negligent. The rear courtyard steward mismanaged his responsibilities. All 3 of you, hand over your account books and duties immediately. At dawn, you will be sent to the estates for reassignment. At my words, the 3 of them went pale and dropped to their knees. The head matron was the first to speak, flipping open her ledger. This old servant has not been negligent. Our accounts are all recorded here. This fire was no accident, it was arson. Song Tinglin's hands clenched beneath her sleeves. She had never seen such strict, meticulous household management in the Borderlands rules. The precision, the caution. My cold eyes met Li Sun's. I gave a faint smile. Read it. The head matron spread open her record book and read aloud. Loud enough for all to hear. At the hour of 11 p.m. 1 a.m. Old woman's song claimed the young lady had a coughing fit. She dismissed all the maids from the courtyard, went to find the general, prepared medicinal soup, and set up a herbal bath, leaving only herself alone with the young lady. At the second quarter of Z, the maid who had gone to fetch the general returned, but was sent away again to retrieve medicine from the dispensary. Shortly after, the courtyard caught fire. It was not that we did not try to put it out. All the servants rushed in with well water, but the door was bolted from the inside, and for a long time, no one answered. The fire was still small when the general arrived outside. Just as the steward broke down the door, the flames suddenly flared up, shooting toward the bed and consuming the room in an instant. Miss Song's arm was burnt in the blaze. The steward also produced his record book. In the ruins, we found bottles of tung oil, remnants of tinder, and a water-soaked cloak. The patrol added. It happened so quickly. Old woman's song was the first to order someone to find the lady. Yet she did nothing for the young lady's injuries, not even calling for the household physician. A bitter plot of self-harm to frame another. A scheme of sowing discord by shifting blame. A trap of using someone else's hand to kill. One link after another. That fire was set in Miss Song's art yard. But it was meant to burn my reputation as the general's principal wife. The whole room fell silent. Song Tinglan, faced with the evidence, turned pale as paper, swaying on her feet. I looked at Li Sun. The general's household has been martial for 3 generations. We defend within with strictness, attack without with ferocity, leaving no crack for the enemy to exploit. In my 3 years managing this household, I have never once forgotten our family's rules and discipline. I tapped the 3 neat ledgers, my smile thin. If even this is called failing to manage the household, then I invite the general to find someone else. At that, Song Tinglan's legs gave way, and she collapsed into the armchair behind her, swaying dangerously. General, It was this old servant's fault. Old woman's song, seeing the situation turn, fell to her knees as if breaking through a wall. The young lady's cough was severe. I was frantic, and I accidentally knocked over the oil lamp. The young lady was only in her undergarments. I could not open the door and ruin her reputation, so I soaked a cloak in water to shield her. When I heard the general's voice, I panicked, thinking I had caused a catastrophe. In my confusion, I threw the tung oil thinking it was water, and it only worsened the fire and hurt the young lady. We are new to the capital, ignorant of its customs. When the young lady was injured, all I could think was to beg the lady to take charge. Every wrong is mine alone. She kowtowed like a pestle, her explanations woven with a kind of desperate plausibility. Even Song Tinglan, pale as death, was cleanly extracted from blame. But nothing in this world is so cheap. I raised my chin. The household physician, medicine box in hand, hurried through the door. As Old Woman's song says, you had no time to call the physician, so I have called one. Then, under everyone's gaze, I enunciated each word. First, examine the burn. Then, examine the cough. Song Tinglan's lips trembled. No need. I have already taken medicine. I am much better. I looked at the head matron's ledger and smiled lightly. But before the fire started, the maid who went to brew the medicine had not yet returned to the courtyard. What medicine did Miss Song take? Her eyes flickered. Perhaps something I brought from the border. The head matron cried out. Impossible. Nothing of the sort was recorded in the inventory. Song Tinglan, faced with my orderly household records, was again struck speechless. Li Sun's jaw tightened, but under my cold gaze, he swallowed the words on his lips. A moment later, behind a screen, her burnt arm was wrapped tightly by the maids. I leaned back into my chair. Miss Song's cough is severe. Please examine her thoroughly. The physician placed a silk cord on her wrist and felt her pulse for a long while. His brow furrowed and relaxed, never settling. Finally, Li Sun could not bear it. Speak plainly. The general is kind and always cares for my health. Please, doctor, speak freely. Song Tinglan shot me a glance of thinly veiled triumph, but the physician lowered his eyes and said, mildly, regarding the cough, Miss Song's lungs are sound. She has no history of chronic respiratory illness. It is curious that it came on so suddenly tonight. Song Tinglan shot to her feet. What did you say? Realizing her outburst, she softened her voice. Aside from the cough, is there anything else? She had hoped the physician would announce her pregnancy. That way, a guest would become a concubine with a proper place in the general's household. But she had forgotten. This was during the period of national mourning. If she were diagnosed with the general's child, the entire household would suffer. Li Sun shot the physician a sharp warning look. The physician caught it and shook his head. Nothing else. Under her pallor and trembling, I rose with a smile. Miss Song is the general's benefactor, and I treat you and your servant as honored guests. Yet you open your mouth to slander the principal wife of a martial household. Why? Song Tinglan's legs gave way. I was overwrought. I misspoke and caused misunderstanding between the lady and the general. I laughed coldly and pressed on. Before the general, I ask, and you answer. Did I order the fire? She clutched her handkerchief, her face a mask of humiliation and distress. It was Old Woman Song who accidentally knocked over the lamp. And how did you burn your arm? Old Woman Song mistook the tung oil for well water, and accidentally hurt me. Have I, as the principal wife, ever slighted or wronged you? The lady has not. Then why stage this bitter act of self-harm in the dead of night to drive a wedge between my husband and me, and to stain my reputation as the mistress of a martial household? My sharp interrogation left Song Tinglan reeling. I didn't. I wasn't. You only have too much ambition. My mocking gaze fell on Li Sun's darkened face. Unfortunately, the capital has its rules. And the general's household is run like an iron bucket, no room for scheming vermin. That fire destroyed an imperial screen gifted by the late emperor, a scroll from the Dowager Empress, a dressing case of Eastern Sea pearls, and countless sandalwood carvings. Those are the foundations of a noble family's heritage and dignity, not playthings for your petty rivalries. All the servants and stewards in the room bowed their heads so low they seemed to wish they could bury themselves in the floor. But every word I spoke, they heard clearly. Song Tinglan sobbed, helpless. The fire was not my doing. Old Woman Song was just a timid old servant who made a mistake. I only panicked and said the wrong thing. And I am already mortified. Why must the lady speak so harshly? As if she wishes me dead. If you truly cannot stand me, then you may leave. I turned to face her. I will personally purchase a 2-courtyard house on the busiest street south of the city. I will assign you 3 or 5 maids and servants, and ensure you want for nothing for the rest of your life. She staggered back half a step, speechless. Silent tears streamed down her face. Enough. Li Sun rose. This matter ends here. I do not wish to hear another word of gossip. Watching his retreating back, I laughed coldly. If that inexplicable fire had ultimately landed on my head, would the general have been so unprincipled in protecting me? Li Sun's gaze was dark. What do you want? For me to be condemned by the whole world for throwing out my benefactor? And besides, you already had your plan laid out. Why not present the ledgers from the start? Why wait until you were under fire yourself, and then turn around and flaunt your household management skills and your injured innocence? In his eyes, that was what it was. I suppressed my cold anger and met his gaze. Was it not you, General, who forbade the stewards from restricting her, watching her, or making her uncomfortable? The ledgers kept to guard against thieves, how could they have been used to guard against the general's own benefactor? I dared to present them. Does the general dare to admit it? Li Sun's righteous indignation froze on his face. I rose. Control your people. Do not let them attempt anything foolish that will cost this entire household its head. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to cut off the rotten limb to save the rest. Li Sun started. Li Sun and I were wed by imperial decree of the late emperor. The Li family, with their military power, and the Jiang family, with their scholarly prestige, were joined in marriage by the emperor's will, and among the eligible young men and women of the right age. That left only him and me. I did not care for his cold severity and domineering ways, nor did he care for my bookish, unassuming air. To speak of love would be absurd. To coexist with mutual respect was already a blessing. Until 3 years ago, when war broke out on the border once more. My daughter Xiaoyue was not yet a month old when Li Sun was sent to the frontier by imperial decree. For 3 full years, I slowly took control of the entire general's household. He won one victory after another on the battlefield. We each fought our own wars, advancing alone, like any ordinary couple. We exchanged letters, but most of them were little more than hollow pleasantries. He saw that in 3 years, I had never complained to him about the hardships of the inner household under his ruthless mother's hand. He even praised me once. Jiang, though of humble birth, is quiet by nature. She is worthy of the title of mistress of the household. And precisely because of that, he dared to bring his pregnant paramour into our home, flouting my dignity. He thought that because I was quiet, I would swallow the humiliation. He thought that as a generous principal wife, I would endure this insult in silence. But he was wrong. I am not only quiet, I am especially skilled at enduring and at delivering the killing blow. I was 8 when my father and aunt poisoned my mother. I was hiding under the bed, playing hide and seek with my maid, and I watched the whole thing. But I was only 8, too small to even reach their heads with a club. How could I take my revenge? So I endured. I endured the gut-wrenching pain of watching my aunt weep theatrically at my mother's funeral, pulling me into her arms with false tenderness. Afterward, she selflessly entered our household to take care of me, becoming my father's second wife under the guise of virtue. I watched them, in my mother's own house, using her money, living in luxury and happiness. I watched them praying before Buddha, wishing for a lifetime of love and many children. And all the while, I was secretly adding contraceptive herbs to the tea I served my father. Until I turned 13. I was taller than my aunt now. When I swung a club at a polo ball, I could hit it farther than my father. So I stopped adding the herbs. And when they went to the temple to give thanks for the child in her womb, I used my face 8 parts like my mother to lure my aunt to the pond outside the city. She was desperate, clutching her sleeves and screaming, "Come out, you coward. We are both his daughters. Why should you marry a glorious general while I am left to be picked over by useless scholars? Your wealth, your future, your husband, your children, they are all mine now, even as a ghost. So what? I killed you once, and I can kill you again." She did not curse the injustice of the world, or the way women were traded like goods in marriage. She did not curse our grandfather for selling both her and my mother to the highest bidder. She only hated that my mother was gentler, quieter, richer, and more glorious than she was. Just a coward's bullying of the weak. Crack. I swung my club with savage fury, smashing it into the back of her knee. She screamed and collapsed at my feet, staring up at me in utter shock. I smiled and crouched down, speaking softly. "You loved everything she had. She didn't you want to die too? I'll grant your wish. Don't thank me. As her daughter, it's the least I could do." I had memorized every detail of her face when she poisoned my mother. Every day, as I played nice with her, I was looking for the perfect spot to strike. Her neck was slender, a quick snap or a slit would do. Her waist was soft, a club to the spine would be easy. But in the end, I chose her kneecaps. She was screaming in agony, still clutching her belly, just like my mother, who, even as she was being force-fed poison, had reached up to pull the bed curtain down to hide me underneath. That desperate, final act of protecting her child, I made her experience it too. She had once made me kneel in the snow for hours. Thump, one blow. She doubled over like a shrimp, protecting her swollen belly, drenched in cold sweat, shrieking in agony. She had pinched my ears and thighs in front of my mother's spirit tablet, making my dead mother suffer along with me. Thump, thump, 2 more blows to her knees. The sound of shattering bone was unmistakable. She was dying, trembling, terrified. begging me to spare her. But it was too late. She had fed me scraps, pricked my fingers with needles to force me to speak well of her to my father, cursed me with my mother's death. Blow after blow. I had my revenge. Then, as she lay like a dying dog, I grabbed her and hurled her into the icy pond, and I hid in the darkness. When my father followed the trail and dove in to save his already drowned love, I sprang out and brought my club down on his head with a resounding crack. That was for his lust-blinded stupidity. For betraying my mother. I sent all three of them, father, aunt, and child, to pay their respects to my mother. Then I went to a tea house in the south of the city and drank tea all afternoon. Their bodies weren't found until they had rotted beyond recognition. Just then, my eldest cousin was about to enter the palace, and our marquis household deemed an elaborate funeral too unlucky. They were hastily buried under the pretext of an accidental drowning. I had bribed a Taoist priest to claim that the restless dead would bring misfortune to the household, so their bones were sealed with talismans, and they became wandering ghosts, never to be reincarnated. I was meticulous. I left no trace. Even years later, no one could find any fault. Even when I entered the general's household and had to live under my ruthless mother-in-law's roof, I bided my time. When I caught my mother-in-law embracing her old flame in tears, I did not expose her. Instead, I retreated soundlessly and closed the gate behind me. Then, I placed a complete dossier on her lover's family under her pillow. I won her favor through understanding and discretion. She retreated to the Buddhist hall and handed full household authority over to me. I became the quiet, flawless mistress of the manor, until 3 days ago. When Li Sun returned victorious from the frontier, he brought a souvenir, a fragile orphan girl named Song Tinglan, who had saved his life. The news reached me, and I only smiled. I knew he had left the battlefield, but he had pushed me into a new war. On the day she arrived, as I reached out to receive her courtesy, I heard a sharp clink. The jade bangle on her wrist, the one Li Sun had given her, fell and shattered on the ground. Her eyes reddened, and she looked at my husband. It's my fault. I shouldn't have worn it so boldly in front of the lady. Everyone gasped. Turning to look at me, Li Sun's face darkened, and he snapped. It's just a jade bangle. I will get you another one. As the principal wife, you should have tolerance. That bangle was the Kunlun jade I had begged him to bring back for me in my letters, but he had forgotten. He forgot the bangle he owed me. Yet he defended the woman who had taken it from me, on his very first day back. He made me look petty and small in front of everyone. I knew it was time to act. A show of force to humble me. I found it ridiculous. I picked up a shard of the broken jade and held it up, deliberately smiling. The general is confused. How could you give such an inferior piece to your benefactor? Even the lowest concubine in this household wears finer things. Someone, bring the best piece from my storehouse for Miss Song. I patted her hand. It was a gift from the dowager. Thought I have a whole chest of them. Any one of them is better than this. Consider it my apology on the general's behalf. With one sentence, I displayed the generosity, grace, and propriety expected of a principal wife. Song Tinglan wore a shoe brocade dress and glittering red chalcedony. She was radiant and expensive, but the jade that had stabbed my heart was the cheapest of all. Zhao Lianer, a concubine I had promoted from Li Sun's courtyard, sharp and clever, chimed in. The general gave it to you. Could it be the one the lady wrote to ask for 3 months ago? The general pays no mind to such things. That bangleaf one the lady so earnestly asked for was meant as a gift to soothe the pregnant wife of one of our stewards. In other words, the bangle Song Tinglan had so cunningly claimed was nothing more than a trinket meant for a servant. She had schemed not for the general's favor toward his wife, but for the wife's own generosity toward her underlings. It was a humiliation of her own making. Song Tinglan went pale, her voice weak. It's not the value of the gift that matters, it's the thought behind it. Li Sun's expression softened, and he looked at Song Tinglan with guilt. Zhao Lianer pressed her handkerchief to her mouth and laughed. How strange! It was fine for 3 months. But the moment the lady reaches out, it slips off and shatters on the floor. At that, the entire courtyard of guests fell silent. If someone truly wanted to break a bangle worn on the wrist, Even pulling it off would take effort. For it to fall and shatter the very moment I reached out, how convenient. Everyone present was shrewd. They understood at once. Song Tinglin's lips trembled. I am weak. I didn't hold it firmly. I murmured in acknowledgement. Took the new bangle from my maid. Anne, ignoring her struggle, forced it over her wrist. The jade was fine, but the bangle was too small. It scraped her skin raw. She gasped, trying to pull her hand back. But I held firm, pushing it past the reddened, abraded flesh with deliberate force. Then I smiled, my teeth showing. From now on, hold steady, stand steady, walk steady. The capital has many stone steps, and one misstep can mean a bloody fall. She did not heed my warning. At the welcoming banquet that very day, she took her first fall. Halfway through the feast, she clutched her chest and said, weakly, General, I truly feel unwell. I would like to retire early. Li Sun turned to me. Choose the best courtyard and move all of Miss Song's belongings there. She wanted status. In front of all the capital's nobility, I set down my chopsticks and lifted my head. Where does the general think would be most suitable? His lips pressed together. You are the mistress of the household. And you ask me, is this how you receive a guest? I lowered my head with a look of mild difficulty. During the period of national mourning, a young lady returning with the generalate is rather delicate. That jolted him. During the national mourning period, officials were forbidden to marry, take concubines, betroth, or produce children. With all the capital's nobility present, if he acknowledged Song Tinglin's status, he would be handing his weakness directly to the new emperor, who already distrusted him. These men, who prided themselves on loyalty, were above all practical. No amount of sentiment could outweigh power and wealth. Song Tinglin's watery eyes fixed on Li Sun, her lips almost bleeding from the pressure of her teeth. Li Sun frowned. After a long pause, as everyone leaned in to hear, he finally spoke in a low voice and drove the first knife into Song Tinglin's heart. Tinglin's brother died shielding me from an arrow. She is a benefactor and an honored guest of our household. She shall have the best guest courtyard. A guest, not a concubine. I glanced at Song Tinglan. Someone, arrange for Miss Song to stay at the Wutong courtyard. It is the most peaceful. Her lashes trembled when her eyes met mine. There was hatred in them. Useless anger was worthless. From this day forward, I was the master. She was the guest. The guest followed the master's rules. On my territory, she could only be at my mercy. But she was not wise enough to lie low after so many losses. That very night, she carried hot soup to Li Sun's study and was stopped by the head matron. When Zhao Lianer covered her mouth and laughed, Song Tinglin's pride shattered. She cried and made a scene, demanding to leave the manor. My mother-in-law and I rushed to the Wutong courtyard to find Song Tinglan in Li Sun's arms, crying like a rain-soaked pear blossom. Before anyone could speak, Li Sun hurled a cup of hot tea at my feet. His face was livid. She is my benefactor, not your prisoner. My mother-in-law's brow twitched. She clutched her prayer beads tightly. I looked at the kneeling head matron. What happened? The matron replied. After the hour of 2:79 p.m. Already into the hour of high 9:11 p.m. The young lady insisted on going to the general's study with soup. There is no such custom in the capital. This old servant stopped her. And then, Li Sun's cold eyes met mine. In the borderlands, Tinglan was used to bringing me food and drink. This was not a whim. You cannot tolerate her. My mother-in-law's eyes flashed coldly. Mind your words. Song Tinglan hung her head, her almond eyes red from weeping. This is not the lady's fault. It is merely a presumptuous servant overstepping. Her words were impeccable. On the surface, she was defending me, blaming only the servant. But whose authority did the servant rely on? Why would she dare to bully a guest? She didn't speak my name, but every word was aimed at me. I suppressed my cold smile and asked the matron, "Why did you bully our honored guest?" The matron answered, head bowed. It was not bullying. From the Wutong courtyard to the study, One must pass by the Qingfeng Pavilion where the young masters stay, and the Shoshu courtyard where the male guests lodge. They were drinking and composing poetry, deep in their cups. An unmarried young lady should not meet with them in such circumstances. Moreover, no noble household in the capital has ever had a female guest visit the master's study late at night. That is what a jealous concubine would do. Miss Song, being unfamiliar with the capital, did not know this. She was goaded into near error. For the sake of the young lady's reputation, this old servant overstepped and advised her, but she misinterpreted it as humiliation and roused the general and the lady. This old servant has failed in her duty. Li Sun flew into a rage and raised his foot to kick the matron. I stepped in front of him. He froze. You shield her from humiliating Tinglan. If I had let Song Tinglan walk into the general's study alone, under the eyes of a group of scholars, that would have been the true humiliation for her, for you, and for me. A benefactor by day, a bedwarmer by night. Who do you think you are deceiving? What would His Majesty think? How would the court view the general's household? Song Tinglan's breath caught. Two maids fell to their knees before Li Sun, about to speak. Drag them out. My mother-in-law's voice was cold. Beat them to death. She shot a warning look at the ashen-faced Song Tinglan. As a guest, follow the host's rules. She left. Song Tinglan clutched Li Sun's sleeve, her voice mournful. I didn't know the capital's customs. I just felt suffocated by all those eyes in the courtyard, watching me. I wanted to be near you for comfort and safety. Li Sun looked at me. She is a guest, not a prisoner. Those eyes in the courtyard, they feel like surveillance. Like a cage. They make her uneasy and unable to breathe. I understood. I gave the order. From now on, in the Wutong courtyard, watch but do not interfere. Say nothing. Do nothing. Otherwise, the maids thrown into the mass grave will be your example. Song Tinglan shot me a glance, barely perceptible. She thought that with Li Sun's protection, we were evenly matched. But the inner courtyard was my battlefield, because Li Sun had forbidden the stewards from restricting, watching, or making her uncomfortable. That was why, when Old Woman Song and Song Tinglan staged the fire, all the servants watched but said nothing. That was why the incident was recorded in the ledgers and why I delivered my blow in public. After the fire, Li Sun came to me. He did not ask about our daughter, nor mention any debt to me. His first words were an order. She is new to the capital and has no sense of security. She is not malicious. Be magnanimous and hold it against her. I was teaching our 3-year-old daughter to write. I didn't look up. If I held it against her, she would have died 100 deaths by now. General, that is not mercy on my part. It is me giving you a choice. Li Sun was stunned for a moment. Then, as he took our daughter's trembling hand and guided her brushstrokes, he said softly, I will place her under my mother's watch. She will not trouble you again. The next day, the weeping Song Tinglan was moved to the Shantan Pavilion beside my mother-in-law's Buddhist hall. Under my mother-in-law's eye, she behaved herself, until my mother-in-law's birthday banquet. His Majesty, in recognition of Li Sun's military achievements, gave special permission for a grand celebration to honor the general's victory and add joy to the dowager's birthday. The capital had not seen such festivities in a long time. The general's manor was packed with guests. Every respectable household in the capital was represented. Among the women's seats, there was singing, dancing, and endless fruit wine. For a brief time, the gloom of national mourning lifted, and smiles appeared, until Song Tinglan made her entrance. She wore a plain white dress, her hair pinned up with a single wooden hairpin. Her pale, sickly face looked even more fragile and pitiful. Even as she arrived late and raised her cup in apology, she deliberately revealed the scar on her arm. The guests exchanged glances. Sensing the drama unfolding, they craned their necks, waiting to see how I, the principal wife, would be humiliated. My cousin Jiang Hanyu, who had always resented me, said deliberately, Sister, even after marrying into the general's household, you still carry that cheap scholarly air. Miss Song is the general's benefactor. a few bolts of brocade, a set of jewelry not stingy with them. Are you making her look shabby and embarrassing herself at the banquet? Aren't you afraid people will laugh at your pettiness and call you unworthy of being the principal wife? Others did not speak, but their eyes accused me of narrow-mindedness, of being unable to tolerate the general's benefactor. Song Tinglan twisted her handkerchief, looking terrified and at a loss. I looked at her, on the verge of tears. Miss Song, why did you not wear the dress I sent? Did you not like it? Or was it not suitable? At that, something seemed to pierce her heart. Forgive me, lady. She rose in a fluster, knocking over a table of fruit and wine. As she rushed forward to apologize, her legs seemed to give way, and she crumpled to the ground. Luckily, Old Woman Song was quick. As the guests gasped behind their handkerchiefs, she caught the young lady in her arms. But Song Tinglan's breath caught. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed into a dead faint. Oh, my poor girl. Old Woman Song burst into wailing tears, already kneeling before my mother-in-law, who had just arrived. Forgive me, Dowager. The young lady did not mean to disturb your banquet. She has always been frail, easily frightened. Lately, she has been terrified, plagued by nightmares, unable to recover her health. Just a few words from the lady were enough to make her faint. She cradled the delicate beauty and sobbed. The medicine has only made her weaker. I beg you, Dowager, find a reliable doctor to examine her in front of everyone, so this old servant can finally be at peace. On the surface, she was pleading for Song Tinglan, but every word accused me of mistreating her. The fire in the Wutong courtyard had been witnessed by half the nobility in the capital. Now, with this scene, all those speculations fell squarely on me, as though I had truly been persecuting the general's benefactor. And forcing the dowager to call a doctor publicly was simply a way to give her unborn child a legitimate origin. She wanted status. She wanted position. She wanted to step over me too. Get it? My mother-in-law saw it clearly. Her fists clenched white. All eyes were on me, with all kinds of judgments. Then slap. The head matron struck Old Woman Song across the face, sending her sprawling, as everyone gasped in shock. The matron pointed at Song's nose and berated her. You vile, ingrate old pastiliche who eats the meat but spits the bones. I would rather lose this old servant's lifetime of service to the late general than stay silent. A nobody from nowhere, riding on the coattails of the general's benefactor, strutting around the manor, bullying everyone. You burned down the Wutong courtyard, destroyed countless valuables. That courtyard alone had been specially renovated for the dowager's own daughter, costing no less than 10,000 silver taels. The lady, pitying Miss Tinglan's lack of attendance, said not one harsh word to you. And how do you repay her kindness? You hoard the young lady's jewelry, steal her clothes and accessories, make her look a fool in public. Everyone will think she's some scheming vixen, taking advantage of the lady's reputation for propriety, showing up like a cheap courtesan, acting as if the world is persecuting her, throwing filth on the lady and the dowager. Old Woman Song shuddered. You lie. The fainted Song Tinglan's lips trembled too. Oh, you think I'm lying? I'll make you believe. The matron clapped her hands. Bring it in. Before everyone's eyes, chest after chest of fine silks, jewelry, and precious tonics were carried to the center of the hall. When the lids were opened, each piece was dazzling in its value, and each item was unmistakably expensive. Old Woman Song was trembling. The matron, seeing this, did not wait for her to speak. She opened the register and read aloud. Item by item. 3rd day of the 11th month. 2 bolts of shoe brocade. 1 piece of coral. 2 sets of head ornaments deposited into Miss Song's private storehouse. 4th day of the 11th month. 3 tails of bird's nest. 1 hoop of pearls. 1 fur cloak deposited into Miss Song's private storehouse. 5th day of the 11th month. 1 pair of jade bangles. 1 bolt of cloud brocade deposited into Miss Song's private storehouse. Day by day, line by line, page by page she read. In just 2 months since entering the manor, this fragile young lady had received more treasures than the entire storeroom of many a noble household. And yet she had come to the banquet looking like a beggar, playing the victim, and shaming the general's household. It was not only foolish, it was malicious. Song Tinglin's hands clenched into fists beneath her sleeves. She thought she had been clever, but nothing in this household escaped my notice. She wanted to burn me in public. She wanted to use the crowd to legitimize the child in her belly. Very well. I would grant her wish and tear her and her servant's last shred of dignity to pieces. My mother-in-law lowered her eyes. A treacherous servant. Bullying a helpless orphan. Throw her out of the general's household. No. Old woman Song screamed. I am the young lady's woman. She cannot do without me. Before she could finish, the matron produced a needle as long as a finger and stabbed it into Song Tinglin's philtrum. The young lady gasped in pain and awakened from her faint instantly. The guests' mocking gazes fell on her, making her squirm. She tried to play the victim again. But my mother-in-law would have none of it. You are a guest of the general's household. Your servant is yours to discipline. What will you do with her? Song Tinglin lowered her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. It was my failure to control my servant that has embarrassed the dowager. I beg you, give her another chance. The dowager was silent. So I spoke. Though she is your servant, she has stolen from the general's household. I have already reported it to the authorities. Song Tinglin's head snapped up, her dark eyes a mix of shock, fear, and barely hidden resentment. After all, Lord Zhang of the Ministry of Justice is drinking in the front hall. A word from me is all it takes. Whether she is guilty or not. Whether she belongs in prison, a trial will reveal everything. Old woman Song's legs shook, and beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. Song Tinglin steeled herself. I have been foolish. Not understanding the dowager's true kindness. Such a treacherous servant is a liability. As the lady suggests, throw her out of the manor immediately. Old woman Song opened her mouth to speak. But the dowager's steward was faster, covering her mouth and dragging her out. The dowager called to me. Shu Yu. The pastries you prepared for me, bring them out now. She was telling me to stop. To not press further. I lowered my head in acknowledgement and presented my birthday peaches. One after another. Cups of congratulations were raised to the dowager. No one gave Song Tinglin another glance. She sat on the floor. Shattered. Her dream of becoming the general's wife was utterly crushed that night. After the banquet, I waited in the garden. When Jiang Hanyu saw me, her eyes lit up. She strode towards me, neck stiff, like a proud rooster. I thought you were so glorious as the general's wife, and yet a nobody from the border nearly ruined your reputation as a jealous shrew. You're just a paper tiger. Fierce only at home. If it were me, I'd have skinned her alive. Slap. I struck her across the face, snapping her head to the side. She was furious. How dare you hit me? You don't even dare touch that bitch. You take it out on me. You're a coward. I stared at her anger, closing in step by step, my face cold. She saw the killing intent in my eyes and stumbled backward. What are you doing? I'm hitting you for your stupidity, for being a knife others used to cut me. Do you think that today, if the reputation of a jealous wife fell on me, I would crumble like a mountain and become dirt beneath your feet? But you forget we are both daughters of the Jiang family. If my reputation is ruined, if I am branded as a jealous, cruel wife who mistreats the general's benefactor, the general's household will sacrifice me to save Facey a warning letter. Or a divorce for Shoto buried tonight's disgrace. What do you think will happen to your marriage then? Do you think you were clever? Showing off and stabbing me in the heart. His Majesty's oversight is strict. Your father is up for promotion. Every one of your little barbs falls on his official hat and his embroidered crane robe. She finally understood. Her legs gave way, and she slumped against the stone table. So those servants, they purposely let me hear her trying to pick a fight with you. They made me the fool who stands out when no one else dares. Even our enmity they knew. How deep is their scheming? Her voice died in her throat. I let out a long breath. You hate me for being lucky, for being the right age to marry into the general's household. Well, now you see. Is this the glorious, splendid, rich marriage you wanted? She lowered her eyes, her lashes hiding her fear and tears. I couldn't handle this kind of scheming. Though I envy your good fortune in marrying so well, I never wished for me to be ruined and driven out like a lost dog. I interrupted. But we rise and fall together. Today, old woman's song paid servants to use you as a weapon. Tomorrow, she might drive a wedge between us and make us tear each other apart. Han Yu, be smart. We escaped this time. But next time, if they force us to choose who to sacrifice, what will you have me do? She froze, her pupils trembling. I turned to leave. Tell your father. The Jiang family must abandon its useless scholar's pride and step forward. That was for their own advancement and reputation. And for Mei needed to draw my blade. Li Sun returned to the main courtyard late that night. My mother-in-law had smashed a teacup. He must have known the truth. Why? When he stood before me, he still frowned. You were too ruthless. I lifted my eyes. And she, who schemed for her own gain at the cost of the entire household's lives, was she not ruthless? She, who tried to destroy my reputation time and again in public to secure her place, was she not ruthless? She, who would use the child in her belly to replace my daughter entirely, was she not ruthless? Li Sun's head snapped up. No. She is gentle and kind-hearted. She truly loves Zhao Yue. I laughed coldly, and pushed a piece of poisoned pastry in front of him. Bread of death from the western regions, deadly and incurable. After tonight's banquet, she passed by Zhao Yue's courtyard, while the nanny was away. She slipped this to her. If I hadn't been prepared, if I hadn't assigned hidden guards to watch my daughter, Zhao Yue would have left me today. I never harmed her life, but she tried to destroy me completely through my only daughter. Li Sun, I ask you one last time. Will you give me and Zhao Yue the justice we deserve? He stared at the pastry for a long time. So long that the oil lamp sputtered, and he finally looked up. She is, after all, my benefactor. The flickering flame reflected my face in his eyes, vague, insubstantial, like duckweed or fallen leaves. Of no consequence. I blew out the lamp and said nothing. I would claim that justice myself. The next day, I entered the palace to thank His Majesty for his rewards. As I left, the emperor gave me 2 jade pendants. Blessed by the monks of the Hugua temple, one I tied to Zhao Yue's waist, to protect her through life. One I hung above my bed, to guard my own safety and smooth my path. After old woman's song was thrown out, she tried to settle in the capital and wait for another chance. But I would not let a tiger return to the mountain. My waiting servants struck her on the back of the neck, stuffed her in a sack, and carried her to a broken temple. I gave a signal. A club struck the sack. The woman inside groaned. And just as she was about to speak, my guard asked, "How many people know about Song Tinglin's child?" The sack went still. She stuttered. Who are you?" Thump. A blow to her spine. The treacherous old woman screamed in agony. The guard asked again, "How many people know?" She hesitated. Thump. Another blow. She curled up in pain, finally begging. Not many. The general wanted to wait until the child was born, after the mourning period ended, and place it quietly under the lady's carrizo. It was kept very secret. Whoever you are, release me. I'll pay you double, triple, in the future. The general's household will belong to Lonner. You cannot afford to offend us. Thump. A final blow silenced her. The guard continued. Then why did you grow discontented? Why try so many times to claim status in public? Old woman's song paused, then answered in a low voice. Because the lady's difficult labor left her unable to bear more children. Lonner's child has been confirmed male, the general's firstborn son. Why should this fortune be handed to someone else? The mother of the eldest son should be a proper wife, not a nameless, lowly concubine. Jiang has no father or brothers to protect her, and no son to secure her position. If she can be the principal wife, why can't my Lonner? Lonner spent 3 years with the general on the frontier, enduring hardship. She carries his firstborn son. He promised her a lifetime. All of that is ours. Why shouldn't we fight for it? Take it back. I promise. When Loner's child is born, I will reward you with 1,000 pieces of gold. That little girl has eaten the threat of death. She won't live past half a month. Then. Thump. I took the club from my guard and brought it down on her forehead with all my hatred. Blood gushed. She lay motionless on the ground. When the sack was opened, the bloody, unrecognizable woman stared lifelessly into the void. Just because she failed to poison Zhao Yue didn't mean she hadn't tried. Blood must be repaid with blood. Soon after, Song Tinglan fell down a flight of steps. No blood. But it caused a miscarriage scare. My mother-in-law's brows could crush a fly. Li Sun was silent for a long time. Finally, after Song Tinglan had cried herself to sleep in his arms and was laid back in bed, he sat in the armchair beside me, rubbing his temples in exhaustion. Shuyu. Tinglan is careless and cannot protect herself well. I entrust her and the child to you, all right. This child, after all, was meant for you, for me, and for this household. My mother-in-law's hand, counting her prayer beads, froze. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but did not. Li Sun was testing me, suspecting I had harmed Song Tinglan. He was forcing me to take responsibility for her safety. I laughed. I have my own child, and aren't you afraid that if I'm the one guarding her, it will be even easier for me to take her life? Li Sun lifted his dark eyes, his gaze falling on me carelessly. You are a capable principal wife, the best mother Zhao Yue could have. Of course, you will think of her reputation and future in all things, leaving no cracks. Shuyu. I trust you to protect Tinglan and the child. He was using Zhao Yue to force my hand. I rose sharply. I will not disappoint the general. Song Tinglan's lips curved in triumph, but her joy was short-lived when she went out to buy pastries and proudly flaunted Li Sun's thoughtfulness before me. A severed finger with its silver ring was delivered to her hands. She knocked over her plate of pastries, stumbled back in fright, and fell down the steps, and this time, she truly miscarried. When she screamed for Li Sun to call the authorities, the head matron said placidly, "It was only made of dough. Why must Miss Song make such a fuss over everything? Is the shame you've already suffered not enough?" Song Tinglan's face went white, and her eyes met mine. I was standing on the stairs, smiling faintly. You killed old woman Song, didn't you? I'll tell the general. He'll have you killed. I laughed. Go ahead, make another scene in front of Li Sun. I'm curious how much of your foolishness and drama he can still tolerate. Song Tinglan's lips trembled. She had no evidence, no information, only a groundless suspicion. To bring down the mistress of the general's household with that, it was a fool's dream. She could only swallow her terror and bitterness, but the hatred in her eyes was unmistakable. It was time for the final blow. One afternoon, after visiting Zhao Yue, I went to pay my respects to my mother-in-law as usual. Song Tinglan was waiting by the pond. She blocked my path. The lady is so meticulous in following rules. So let me ask, when rules and gratitude conflict, which is more important? She was alone. I understood. I stepped closer deliberately. Without rules, there is no order. Rules naturally take precedence. She smiled lightly and shook her head. Is that so? Then she leaned in and lowered her voice. If rules were truly more important, how could this child, without official approval, be welcomed into the general's household? I lifted my eyes to meet hers. What do you think would happen if this child were nearly lost because of you? Would the general protect you the way he protects me? Her smile deepened, her eyes gleaming with certainty. The next moment, thump, I drove my foot into her swollen belly. Her eyes widened. She screamed. Then she fell backward into the coal pond with a splash. My trusted attendants looked down at their toes, silent as cicadas in winter. As she struggled to climb out, I picked up a stone and hurled it at her forehead. That was the debt she owed Zhao Yue. I had planned this. I had waited for it. Her head was bloodied. She bobbed in the water. I stood on the bank, watching with interest as she flailed in panic. She could swim, but with the blood streaming down her legs and the agony in her belly, she was in hell. The blood stained the cold water red. I watched, Watched her arrogance and bravado turn pale in the water. Watched her hope of rising through motherhood shatter. Piece by piece. Finally, the maid Li Sun had assigned to her came running. Screaming. The servants pulled her out. Li Sun arrived in a panic. The maid knelt hastily. "General, the lady has harmed the young lady and the child. If Miss Song miscarries, her body may be ruined. She may never bear children again. Please, General, seek justice for her." As she spoke, the wife of the Imperial censor who had been walking with Zhao Yue to find Ma froze, her smiling face turning rigid. Li Sun's eyes widened. "Madame Shen, why are you here?" Madame Shen laughed lightly. Her voice pointed. "Yes, I have come at a bad time." She turned to me, handed Zhao Yue back into my arms. I like Zhao Yue very much. I would have been honored to be her godmother, but... Her gaze swept over the trembling maid, whose hands were stained with blood, and finally rested on Li Sun, her smile curdling. "This matter, I must discuss it with my husband." The censor was an upright and incorruptible official, deeply trusted by the new emperor. He had even impeached Prince Huai, the emperor's own half-brother, for trying to betroth his daughter during the mourning period and had him banished to a desolate fief. The new emperor feared Li Sun's military power and resented his secret collusion with the ambitious Prince Ning. He was already looking for an excuse to strike. A meritorious general could be touched lightly, but if he violated the national mourning period, that was another matter entirely. Li Sun understood the stakes perfectly. He glanced briefly at the blood on the maid's hands, then lowered his gaze coldly. "You have witnessed a disgrace. Madam, she was a guest in our household, but she debased herself, conceiving a child out of wedlock, shaming our family's honor. I will have her sent to a convent at the outskirts of the city to repent, to restore our martial household's name." The mourning laws applied to officials, not commoners. Between protecting himself and protecting Song Tinglan, Li Sun chose himself and his power. The best way to solve one problem was to create a bigger one. He no longer cared about Song Tinglan's grievances or her innocence. The scandal had to be buried before sunrise, otherwise it would become a censure on the emperor's desk by the next morning. Ignoring her weakened state after the miscarriage, Li Sun had her sent to the Ning'an convent that very day. Through the screen, I met Song Tinglan's eyes drenched, contorted with pain, and full of despair, pain, and hatred. I had told her, "One misstep, and you will bleed." She hadn't listened, and now she was bleeding. That night, Li Sun sat in his armchair, staring at the cold moon in the courtyard. "You did it deliberately. He wasn't wrong. I did." Song Tinglan had been spoilt but not clever. Without old woman Song, she was a bird with broken wings. When she bribed a maid with a hairpin to learn my movements, I knew. Today's trap, luring the snake out and striking it at its weakest point, was my own counter-scheme. Li Sun's eyes were ice cold, reflecting the same cold moon. "You have everything. You didn't need to target her." I laughed softly. "Zhao Yue and I deserve justice. You wouldn't give it, so I took it myself. Besides, if she hadn't schemed against me, I couldn't have schemed against her. I didn't destroy her. Your excessive favor and indulgence destroyed her." He shot to his feet. "You will regret this." "I won't." His plot with Prince Ning had already been delivered to the palace, including the list of his confidants. That was my deal with the emperor. On the very first night Song Tinglan was sent to the convent, I set a fire. As she fled through a window I had deliberately left open, hiding in the brambles to escape pursuit, one of my men stood nearby and said, loud enough for her to hear, "We must root out the weeds. The general's reputation is at stake." He ordered, "Success only. No failure. We must find her and silence her." Song Tinglan covered her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. When the convent burned and Song Tinglan disappeared, Li Sun was frantic. Until, on Zhao Yue's birthday, he received the jade bangle I had forced onto Song Tinglan's wrist on the day she arrived, along with a note, "Come, or bear the consequences." He left immediately, abandoning the family celebration and the gifts. I watched him go, and quietly placed a chicken leg on my daughter's plate. "Remember this, Zhao Yue." our happiness, our completeness, our joy. We must never place them in anyone else's hands. We must hold them in our own. After all, from now on, for every birthday she celebrated, her father would not be there. Lee Sun rushed to the inn but found it empty. A note on the table directed him to the 10-mile pavilion in the suburbs. He hurried there. Meanwhile, the Jiang family, under the pretext of celebrating Zhao Yue's birthday, took my daughter and me back to their home, but only Zhao Yue arrived at the Jiang estate. I was already waiting at the 10-mile pavilion. When Lee Sun arrived and saw it was Menet, Song Tingland was about to rage. Then, twang, an arrow pierced his left chest. I lowered the crossbow and approached step by step, then brought the butt of it down on his face with a crack. Looking down at his shock and pain, I smiled. The arrow is poisoned. The less you move, the longer you'll live. Lee Sun knelt on one knee, forcing himself upright, his eyes bloodshot. I sent her away. What more do you want? I laughed. The justice I seek was never about her, it was about you. Remove one, and 1,000 more will come. A man who is unfaithful to his wife, unloving to his daughter, and negligent toward the lives in his household deserves to die as he lived. The threat of death, that poison from the pastry, is yours today. It is the justice I wanted, and the retribution I give. Lee Sun's pupils shook. Your quietness, your virtue was all a lie. It was true, but my endurance and my killing instinct are also true. Your death has been planned since the day you ignored the poison pastry meant for Zhao Yue. You don't know yet. You fell at the 10-mile pavilion, and your beloved Prince Ning, His Majesty, has already killed him. The men who did it, none other than your own brothers-in-arms. Lee Sun's eyes shook with disbelief. They would never betray me. So, when His Majesty ordered them to kill Prince Ning, he used your own command token. Lee Sun trembled. You took my token. I smiled. The Jiang family has no shortage of clever minds. On the day Song Tinglan miscarried, when you were in a panic, I took your token. The Jiang family used 3 hours to make a perfect replica and put it back on you. You were too busy thinking about your lost Song Tinglan to notice. Lee Sun, from now on, I no longer have to endure your vacillation. Swallow your arrogance, or watch your pathological selfishness. Song Tinglan will come to see you off, but not for another hour. I raised the crossbow and brought the butt down on his temple. He collapsed. Then I dragged his unconscious body under the pavilion, waiting for his beloved to deliver the final blow. When Song Tinglan arrived, Lee Sun was already dying, the poison deep in his bones. He could not speak. She smiled and, from behind him, drove a blade through his back. Then she laughed, tears streaming down her face. I did it. I always knew I was not inferior to anyone, that I deserved the best. But you debased me. You promised me a title and I ended up less than a lowly concubine. You said my child would be the future of the general's household, but you wanted his mother to be someone else. You said I was the only one you ever loved, yet you made me your enemy's loser time and time again. The laughingstock of the capital. You said just bear with it, and I bore and bore, until I had nothing left. And you even wanted me dead. Lee Sun's chest convulsed. He vomited blood. Song Tinglan knew nothing. I hate you. You trampled my heart and my life. Lee Sun, I wanted to kill you with my own hands, suddenly that would satisfy my hatred. His pupils contracted. He coughed up black blood, his insides twisting in agony. Song Tinglan laughed through her tears. Wild dogs will tear you apart. You deserve to die in pieces. She stepped toward him, just as she had stepped into his tent 3 years ago. Then, it was for love, desire, wealth, and dreams. Tonight, it was for revenge and release. In his dying agony, she raised the blade. Swish. She cut through his neck just as the general's guards, who had been hunting her, ran her through with a sword. She vomited blood, falling beside Lee Sun. As their eyes met, she finally saw the black blood on his lips and understood everything. But it was too late. She could only gasp and die. Lee Sun coughed up one last mouthful of blood, then shed a single tear and closed his eyes forever. I collected the body of Lee Sun, killed by the very woman he had wronged. I held his funeral with tears and public grief, the perfect, gentle, quiet widow. Even my mother-in-law could find no flaw in me. Patience and plotting, that was all it was. Prince Ning's rebellion was crushed. He was executed on the spot. The emperor and I had both won our game. His rewards fell upon Zhao Yue. She was named a princess, with imperial permission to marry a man of her choice, and the title was made hereditary. I was made a first-rank noblewoman, in sole possession of the general's household. The Jiang family, having contributed to rooting out the traitor, were all promoted. They were naturally grateful, and we stood together as one. My life of wealth and security was assured. As I said from the beginning, my nature is gentle and still, and I am especially skilled at endurance and the killing blow. I am like a cold jade, smooth to the touch, but sharp at the edge.